Hey, horror fans, welcome back to Jay versus Horror and another episode of 90s Thriller Rewind. Now, today we're going to be talking about one of the best movies ever made. It's from 1990, and we're talking about Misery. That's right, the movie directed by Rob Reiner, adapted from Stephen King's novel, starring James Caan and Kathy Bates, and of course, the great Richard Farnsworth. Now, guys, if you haven't seen Misery, I don't know what to tell you. You got to go out and watch this. What are you doing with your life? We have to have a conversation about what you're doing with your life if you haven't seen Misery. It's one of the greatest thrillers of all time. Go out and check it out if you haven't seen it, because what I'm about to tell you is absolutely not the truth. That's right. Misery is a 1990 romantic comedy about a disillusioned writer and a retired nurse who find each other somewhere in the white covered Colorado scenery, right? So what we get here is basically James Caan playing Paul Sheldon, who has written a great number of these misery books. Who he just absolutely hates these books. They're kind of trashy romance novels, and he wants to get away from that. He wants to write things that are more serious. So he tries to kill off the character of Misery without ever realizing that he has many, many fans who are deeply attached to this character. Now, Paul goes, when he writes to this hotel up in Colorado, and he wants to be alone and secluded, because writers, we need all this crazy, stupid shit to be able to write. And so Paul leaves the hotel in the middle of a snowstorm, which is probably not the smartest idea, and he wrecks his car, and then he's pulled out of the wreckage by the beautiful Kathy Bates. And her character here is Annie Wilkes, one of my favorite characters of all time. She takes Paul back to her house. And at first it seems like she's trying to help him heal. She's using her nurse training to help him heal from his wounds. Paul's pretty beat up from the wreck. And also the great snowstorm that caused this wreck has, in her words, taking out all the phone lines and the roads, and so there's really no way to contact anybody else. And so Paul is just kind of stuck with Annie, and this goes on for a few days where he kind of believes that. But as we go along, we find out there's much more to the story, of course. Annie is insane and has tendencies to become violent. And guys, if you've never seen Castle Rock, if you want some more background on Annie Wilkes, go watch season 2 of Castle Rock. And I think it'll tell you exactly what you need to know about this woman. So from here, we realize that Annie has no intention of letting Paul go. Of course, she uses the line, "I'm your number one fan." And it's not so heartwarming in this film, right? So from here, we see that she basically takes control of the situation and will not let Paul leave. And then once he does actually heal, she takes advantage of the fact that he's not able to get around too good to injure him again and prevent him, in her mind, from leaving until she is finished with what she wants to do. And what she wants is for Paul to rewrite his latest novel. She will not tolerate Misery being killed off. That's not acceptable to Paul's number one fan. And if you watch Castle Rock season 2, I think you'll understand why she feels so deeply about Paul Sheldon. It's something that was made 30 years later, but it's still, or 35 years later, whatever. But it's still very interesting to the plot of this, if you go back and look. And so we have a fight to the death between Paul and Annie. Paul trying to be released, and in the meantime, we have this, local sheriff, cop, nice guy named Richard Farnsworth, who is going around investigating, trying to figure out what happened to Paul. The only complaint I have is that this ends up being much like the Dick Halloran character in The Shining, the film version anyway, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to build a character up this much for the end result. I'll say that. But we get to the end and we see that Paul and Annie are trying to share one last dinner together before Annie decides that they should both commit suicide together, because that's really the only way that any romantic comedy should end, right, Mr. Shakespeare? But But anyway, it doesn't always work out the way we think it's going to, and neither does it here. Sheldon is not an idiot. That's one thing I will say that, Kathy Bates won an Oscar for her performance in this movie. James Caan did not. He was not even nominated. But really, if you look at it, the character of Paul Sheldon is more intricate than you believe. I mean, Paul Sheldon is an intelligent man. He's not just your average narcissistic Arthur. Not to say that he's not narcissistic, but he's not just so enthralled with himself that he can't think existentially. So it's very interesting to see this battle of wills play out, especially towards the end. And guys, I'm not going to talk too much about this movie because, like I said, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. What are you doing with your life if you haven't seen this movie? And I'm going to give Misery, I'll give it, God, I hate doing this, but I'm only talking about the movies that I like recently, so why would I not do this? I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. It deserves a 9 out of 10. It's one of the best, it's probably the best Stephen King adaptation as far as on film. Even though it's not in my top 10 movies of all time, and one of the other ones is, I would still say it deserves that 9 out of 10, at least an 8.5 out of 10. I can tell you this, if you go watch it, if you've never seen it, if you've never read the book, you won't be disappointed. I have not personally read the book, but I have read about the book, if that makes any sense. So I would also recommend going to read a book, because there's some stuff in here that ties into other King stories that's very interesting. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for today. Now, next time, guys, we're going to be talking about a weird one. A really weird one. This one is called The Slaughter of the Innocents. And it's a film that Scott Glenn made right after Silence of the Lambs. And, or he might have even made it during, the period where they were promoting Silence of the Lambs. Because it came out pretty close, afterward, within a year or something. And I know that Scott Glenn refused to do movies like this after that because of some things that happened with the Silence of the Lambs when they were filming that. So this seems like it would be his last shot at a film like this. It's called Slaughter of the Innocents. It's not connected to Silence of the Lambs, other than the title seems oddly familiar. And I think that you can add that to the producers, right? You can put that on the producers and the people who were trying to sell it after Silence of the Lambs came out. But yeah, we're going to be talking about that one next time, guys, and we will talk to you the next time we've got something worth talking about. And we'll talk to you then, guys. Bye.